Michael Walker hadn't had more than 4 hours of sleep in the last week. But when the woman in the soaked designer dress sat crying alone on the edge of the hospital courtyard bench at 2 in the morning, he didn't hesitate. He adjusted his grip on the little boy asleep on his shoulder. "You okay?" he asked her softly, stepping closer. The woman jerked her head up, startled, mascara smudged, eyes bloodshot. "No," she said hoarsely. "But I'll live." Michael glanced toward the ER entrance. "You waiting on someone?" She shook her head. "No, I was in a car. I just needed air." He noticed her heels on the ground beside her feet, the way she clutched her coat around her like armor. Her hands were trembling. She didn't look okay. He sat down beside her, careful not to jostle the sleeping boy curled against his chest. "Look, my kid's out cold," he said, nodding toward the boy. "And I've got nothing but time until they call us back in. So if you need someone to talk to," she let out a shaky laugh. "You're offering therapy in the middle of a hospital parking lot at 2 a.m. with a child in your arms." "Pretty much," he said. "Name's Michael. This little guy is James. He's got another ear infection. Third one this month." Her eyes softened as she looked at James. "Poor kid." "You?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Peyton. Peyton Hart." "Nice to meet you, Peyton Hart," he said. "Now, you want to tell me what had you crying in the rain like a scene out of a movie?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. His jeans were worn, his boots scuffed. He had the kind of face that looked both tired and kind, deep brown eyes, a rough stubble lining his jaw, and a tiredness that didn't hide his warmth. "I got dumped," she said finally, voice cracking. "Oh," he said. "That sucks." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a while. James stirred slightly, and Michael gently rocked him. Peyton glanced at the boy again. "You're doing this alone?" "Yeah," he said. "James's mom left when he was 2. It's just us now." She blinked. "That's a lot." "I'm managing," he said with a shrug. "Barely. I fix cars during the day, pick up delivery shifts at night when I can get someone to watch him. This hospital's practically our second home." She looked down at her hands. "I was supposed to get engaged tonight." Michael raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He said he couldn't handle me being who I am. Said I'm too busy, too cold, too ambitious. That I make him feel small. Michael frowned. "Sounds like a coward." She gave a short laugh. "He said I care more about my company than I do about people." Michael tilted his head. "Do you?" "No," she whispered. "But I'm good at hiding when I care." Michael shifted James in his arms. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you're doing a terrible job hiding it right now." Her eyes welled up again, but this time it wasn't from pain. Michael reached into his coat pocket and handed her a crumpled napkin from a diner. "Sorry, that's all I've got." She laughed through her tears. "It's perfect." They sat together until the sun started to rise. Peyton talked more than she had in months about dreams, regrets, pressure. Michael listened, asked questions, never judged. And somewhere between her third confession and his soft laugh at her terrible joke, she realized she didn't want to leave. But she had to. When a nurse came out and called James's name, Michael stood. "Duty calls." Peyton stood too, brushing her dress off. "Thank you for staying." He gave her a tired smile. "Anytime." She hesitated. "Can I see you again?" Michael blinked. "You want to see me?" Yeah, I'd like that." She pulled a business card from her coat pocket and handed it to him. "That's my direct line." He glanced at it. "Peyton Hart, CEO, Hart and Sloan Holdings." She froze. He looked back at her, stunned. "Wait, you're that Peyton Hart?" "I didn't want to lead with it," she said softly. "Didn't seem right." Michael let out a low whistle. Wow. Wow. "I'm still the same woman you sat with all night," she said quickly, watching his face. He looked at her for a long moment. Yeah, you are." She smiled, and for the first time all night, it reached her eyes. "Call me." He nodded. "I will." Michael watched her walk toward a sleek black car waiting at the curb, the driver opening the door for her. She glanced back once, and their eyes met. She waved. He waved back, James still asleep in his arms. Michael Walker had no idea what he'd just stepped into. But he knew one thing for sure. He wanted to see her again. Michael didn't call her the next day, or the day after that. Not because he didn't want to thought about her constantly, but because every time he picked up the card and looked at her name, his fingers froze. Peyton Hart, CEO. Her world felt like one built of glass and gold. And he was a man who lived in grease-stained coveralls and counted every dollar before spending it. Still, she stayed in his thoughts. The way her voice had cracked when she talked about expectations. The way she had looked at James with something like yearning. The way she had listened to him. Really listened like she hadn't done that in a long time. By Thursday, he'd memorized her number without dialing it. James was finally on the mend, which meant Michael was back at the auto shop full-time. Business had been slow lately. People were holding off on repairs, opting to ride out engine lights or strange noises. The shop owner, Gus, had slashed hours again. "Maybe you should look into something steadier," Gus said, tossing Michael a rag as he wiped oil from his hands. "You've got the brains for more. Whatever that woman did to you, it's got you walking like your boots are full of bricks." Michael brushed his forearm across his brow. "She didn't do anything. He stopped. She's not someone I can follow up with." "Not really." "Why?" "Because she's got money." Michael didn't answer. "Son, money makes things easier, but it doesn't make people better. Or worse." Later that night, he sat on the floor beside James's bed, watching his son breathe in steady, peaceful rhythms. The kid always curled toward the wall, hugging his stuffed giraffe like it was made of gold. Michael tucked the blanket around him tighter and stood. He found her card in the kitchen drawer, still where he'd left it, beneath the unopened mail and a half-used box of crayons. His thumb hovered over the edge of the paper. By the next morning, he'd made up his mind. He borrowed a friend's beat-up sedan, put on the cleanest shirt he owned, still faded, but at least it didn't have any tears, and drove across the city. Hart and Sloan Holdings sat in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building that looked like it didn't just house wealth, but manufactured it. The lobby was all sleek marble and sharp edges, with a reception desk that looked more like a sculpture than something functional. "I'm here for Peyton Hart," he said to the woman behind the desk, who didn't even glance up from her screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," he said, adjusting his stance. She looked up then, taking him in. Her eyes lingered on the collar of his shirt before returning to her screen. "Ms. Hart doesn't take walk-ins." "Tell her it's Michael Walker," he said. "We met 4 nights ago, at Mercy General." The receptionist's brows lifted slightly, but she picked up the phone. After a short exchange, she hung up and said, "Elevator to the 41st floor. She's expecting you." When the doors opened, her assistant was already waiting. "This way," the woman said, walking briskly ahead of him through a corridor lined with abstract art and glass-walled meeting rooms. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and money. He stepped into Peyton's office and stopped. It was nothing like he expected. There were floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides, but the space felt warm, lived in. A half-drunk mug of coffee sat beside a stack of papers. A framed photo of an older woman and a young Peyton sat near her monitor. And behind her desk, Peyton stood. Her expression was unreadable. "I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you'd want to," he replied. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." He did. The silence stretched. "You didn't call," she said finally. "I didn't know if I should." "Why?" "Because of this." She gestured around the office. He nodded. "I thought maybe you'd disappeared because you regretted talking to me." Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "No, I didn't regret it. Not for a second." "Then why wait?" He looked her in the eyes. "Because I've never been in a place like this before. And I've never met a woman like you. You were supposed to get engaged the night we met. That's not exactly a casual conversation starter." She leaned back slowly. "That relationship was over long before that night." He let out a breath. "Still, I'm not used to any of this." Peyton folded her hands on the desk. "Neither am I." "Not really." He raised an eyebrow. "I built this company from scratch," she said. "People think I inherited money. I didn't. My father left us with debt and a mortgage. I worked 3 jobs through college. I clawed my way up here." Michael blinked. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want you to look at this office and think it's the only part of me that matters." He nodded slowly. She stood. "Come with me." He followed her out of the office, past the assistant who glanced up in clear surprise, into a private elevator. She pressed the top-floor button. When the doors opened, they stepped into a rooftop garden, lush, quiet, and empty. String lights were woven through trellises. A small table sat in the center, already set for 2. "I've had this set up for days," she said. "Just in case you called." Michael stared at her. You were waiting. I hoped, she corrected, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I never hope for things. But I hoped for this. He stepped toward the table, running his fingers over the linen napkin. This is a lot. It's dinner, she said. With someone who made me feel more seen in one night than most people have in years. He looked back at her. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. He smiled, the tension in his shoulders slowly easing. He glanced around. So, what's on the menu? She grinned. Whatever you want. But I'm warning you I don't cook. Good, he said. Because I do. He offered her his hand. Let me take care of dinner next time. She took it. Next time? There better be one, he said. There will be, she replied. But only if you bring James with you. I haven't stopped thinking about him. Michael nodded. Deal. They stood there, her hand in his, the city lights flickering behind her like stars caught in glass. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. This wasn't just dinner. It was the beginning of something neither of them had dared to hope for. 3 weeks later, Michael found himself standing beside a gleaming white marble bar at an exclusive gallery opening in Tribeca, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that wasn't his. Peyton had sent it over without comment, just a note from her assistant saying the event was formal. He'd hesitated to accept it until he caught James coloring a picture of Daddy in a Prince outfit, and realized maybe he needed to stop second-guessing himself. Peyton appeared through the crowd like she belonged to another realm entirely. Her dress shimmered like candlelight, but it wasn't the gown that caught his eye, it was the way her expression softened the second she saw him, like the storm in her life paused for a moment. You came, she said, her voice low and breathless. I said I would, Michael replied. I just didn't expect to be surrounded by people who think champagne is a food group. She laughed, a sound he hadn't heard in person since the rooftop dinner. You look incredible. I feel like I stole this off someone in a better tax bracket. You didn't. I bought it. He glanced around. So this is your world. One corner of it, Peyton said. I don't love these events. But the artist tonight is a friend. And I wanted you here. A waiter passed by with a tray of tiny hors d'oeuvres that looked like abstract sculptures. Michael leaned closer. What even is that? Peyton plucked one and handed it to him. Apparently, it's a deconstructed oyster with lavender foam. He blinked. That's offensive to oysters. She laughed again, shaking her head. Come on. There's someone I want you to meet. They moved through the crowd, her hand brushing his once before slipping into his. He noticed how people looked at her nodding, parting, some whispering. But when she introduced him, she did it with confidence. This is Michael Walker, she said. He's important to me. That pause wasn't lost on anyone. Not on the older gentleman in the velvet blazer who raised his brows, and definitely not on the woman in a sleek black sheath who narrowed her eyes with curiosity. Michael kept his responses polite and brief. He didn't know how to talk about torque ratios or transmission rebuilds in a room full of people discussing hedge fund trends and art installations. But Peyton never let go of his hand. Later, when the speeches started and the lights dimmed, they stepped out onto the narrow balcony that overlooked the city. The wind teased her hair, and he watched her watching the skyline. You're quiet, she said. I'm just trying to take it in. Too much. No, he said. Just different. She leaned against the railing. You know, I've spent years trying to prove myself in this world. That I could belong here. That I could run with people who were born into it. And tonight, I realized something. He turned to her. What's that? It doesn't matter if I belong here. What matters is who I want beside me when I leave. Michael studied her face. You thinking about leaving? I'm thinking about what I miss when I stay. He didn't reply right away. The wind picked up, and she stepped closer without thinking. I've been thinking about you, Peyton said. More than I should. I know we come from different planets. I know your life is full of things I can't begin to understand. But I've never felt more safe than I did that night outside the hospital. You don't strike me as someone who needs safety, Michael said. No, she admitted. But I want it. He exhaled slowly. I don't have much, Peyton. No stocks, no vacation houses, no connections. What I do have is a kid who means the world to me, a job that barely pays the bills, and a whole lot of reasons not to get involved with someone who could buy the building I live in. She didn't flinch. Are you telling me why you can't, or why you won't? He looked away. I'm telling you it terrifies me how much I want to. Peyton stepped forward, placing her hand on his chest. Then stop being afraid. That's easy for you to say. You're fearless. No, she said. I'm just tired of pretending I don't care. Michael swallowed hard, his heart thudding beneath her palm. If we do this, it's not going to be easy. Nothing worth it ever is. He hesitated, then curled his fingers around hers. James comes first. Always. I wouldn't want it any other way. They stood in silence, the city buzzing beneath them, the world narrowing to a single point of gravity between them. Somewhere behind them, applause erupted from the gallery space. Neither moved. I've never done this before, Michael said. What? Held hands with a woman on a balcony? Fallen in love with someone who lives in a world I don't understand. She smiled. Then let me make it easier. Peyton rose on her toes and kissed him soft, certain, filled with everything they hadn't spoken aloud. When she pulled back, her breath caught. Michael brushed his thumb along her jaw. You're going to ruin me. No, she said. I'm going to love you. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. She already knew. Michael adjusted the strap of James's backpack on his shoulder as they stepped out of the elevator, the boy's small hand tucked securely in his. The penthouse door opened before he could knock twice. You're early, Peyton said, barefoot, her hair pinned in a soft updo. And you brought him. You invited both of us, Michael replied. He's been talking about this all week. James peeked around his dad's legs. You said there'd be pizza. Peyton grinned. There's a whole kitchen full of it. James bolted past her, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Michael lingered in the doorway. You sure about this? Completely, she said. Come in. He stepped inside, the warmth of her apartment a contrast to the chill outside. The space was elegant but inviting, soft rugs, books stacked beside armchairs, the scent of basil and dough drifting from the kitchen. James had already found the dining nook, where several pizza boxes were opened and waiting beside a pitcher of lemonade. Michael followed her to the kitchen, where Peyton handed him a glass of red wine. I hope you're okay with casual tonight, she said. I had an exhausting day, and I didn't feel like heels or formality. Honestly, this is better, he said. I've had enough formal lately to last me a year. She leaned against the counter, watching him. How's the shop? He rubbed the back of his neck. Actually, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Her brows lifted. Yeah. One of the investors you introduced me to at the gallery, Dominic, he stopped by last week. Turns out he's trying to launch a mobile mechanic service. He asked me to help consult. It could turn into something more permanent. That's amazing. I haven't said yes yet. It's a risk. It'd mean stepping away from the shop, maybe even moving James into a different school district. I don't want to put him through too much change. Michael, she said gently, you'd be building something. For both of you. I know. It just feels big. You don't have to do it alone. He looked at her. That's the part that scares me most. She stepped closer. You've been carrying everything for years. You don't need to carry me too. I can stand on my own. I just want to stand beside you. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. Behind them, James shouted from the other room, Dad, they have pineapple. Michael chuckled. That's his version of winning the lottery. Later, after James had devoured half a pizza and fallen asleep curled up on the couch under a blanket Peyton had tucked around him, they moved to the balcony, wine glasses in hand. The city lights stretched out beneath them, a quiet hum beneath the stillness of the night. I've been thinking, Peyton said, her voice softer now. I've spent so much of my life trying to prove I could do everything alone. And then you showed up, and I realized. Maybe I don't want to. Michael turned to her, his gaze searching. What are you saying? I want more with you. I'm not good at slow, he admitted. I'm not asking for slow. I'm asking for real. He took a breath. You remember that night at the hospital? I haven't forgotten a second. I thought I was just helping someone get through a hard night. I didn't know I was meeting the person who'd change my life. I didn't know I was meeting the man I'd fall in love with. He looked at her, his jaw tense. This isn't just a fling for me. It can't be. It isn't, she said. I'm not interested in temporary. Michael let the silence stretch between them, tension crackling in the air. Then he set down his glass and reached into his jacket pocket. I wasn't going to do this tonight, he said. I didn't plan to say anything until I had everything figured out, but I realized waiting for the perfect moment means risking the moment entirely. He pulled out a small, velvet box. Peyton froze. He opened it. Inside was a simple gold band, no diamond, No flourish, just honest, solid promise. I can't give you glass towers or private jets, but I can build you a life. I can be the man who shows up every day for you, for James, for whatever comes next. Tears gathered in her eyes. I want to marry you, Peyton. Not because I think I belong in your world, but because I want to build a new one with you. She didn't speak, only stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his. You really think I'd say no to that? She whispered. He smiled, something raw in his expression. So that's a yes? That's a forever. They kissed beneath the stars, the wind cool against their skin, the city forgotten. Inside, James stirred on the couch, half awake, then smiled in his sleep. Weeks later, the ceremony was small, just close friends. James's best man, Peyton, in a dress that shimmered like hope. The reception was held in the rooftop garden above the office where they first reconnected, now transformed with soft lights and wildflowers. Michael danced with James while Peyton watched from across the floor, laughter in her throat and tears in her eyes. She had built an empire, but this was the thing she'd never dared to dream of. A family, a home, a love that didn't demand perfection. Michael looked across the dance floor at her and mouthed one word, mine, and she mouthed it back, always. The sun filtered through gauzy curtains as Peyton stepped into the kitchen barefoot, her robe loosely tied at the waist. Michael stood at the stove, already dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes with one hand while pouring James a glass of milk with the other. James, still in his pajama shirt with dinosaurs on it, sat at the kitchen island, humming softly as he colored on a placemat. You're spoiling us, Peyton said, her voice still husky from sleep. Michael glanced over his shoulder. You say that like it's a bad thing. She crossed to him and pressed a kiss to the nape of his neck. It's not. It's perfect. James wiggled his legs under the stool. Dad said we're going to the aquarium today, and I can pick the snacks. You negotiated snacks before breakfast? Peyton asked, raising an eyebrow. I made a chart, James said proudly, holding up a piece of notebook paper with crayon scribbles and snack categories. Michael leaned in. He's got categories for gummy sharks and cheddar whales. I didn't even know those were a thing. They are, James said. And they're essential. Peyton laughed, settling onto the stool beside him. Well then, I guess we're going to need a bigger bag. They ate together with the easy rhythm of people who'd learned each other's habits. Michael always poured too much syrup and let James steal his strawberries. Peyton always pushed the last bite onto Michael's plate when she claimed to be full. There was no ceremony anymore, no hesitation, just living. After breakfast, while Michael packed a cooler, Peyton helped James get dressed. She carefully rolled the sleeves of his shirt, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Do you like living here? She asked him quietly. James nodded. It's big and the couch is soft, and you always have cookies. She smiled. I'm glad. He looked up at her. Do you love my dad? Peyton froze for a second, then knelt to his level. Very much. Good, James said, satisfied. Because he loves you. Later that afternoon, they wandered through the aquarium, James darting from tank to tank, face pressed to the glass as he rattled off facts about sea creatures. Michael kept one hand on his shoulder, the other brushing against Peyton's as they walked. Did you ever think your life would look like this? She asked quietly. Michael smiled without turning. I didn't think I was allowed to want it. You are. He glanced at her, watching the way her eyes softened as she looked at James. You're good with him. I want to be. You already are. They took the long way home, driving along the waterfront while James dozed in the back seat, his head lolling against the window. Peyton rested her head on Michael's shoulder as he drove, her fingers laced with his on the center console. When they got back, Michael carried James inside and settled him in his bed. Peyton lingered in the doorway, watching him pull the blanket up and tuck the boy's favorite plush giraffe into the crook of his arm. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers the years before, Michael said, keeping his voice low. When it was just me trying to keep it together. He remembers who's always been there, Peyton replied. He turned to her. You think he's okay with all of this? I think he loves having two people who love him more than anything. Michael stepped forward, his expression shifting. I never thought I'd get to have this. You. Us. A life that doesn't feel like I'm just surviving it. You're not the only one who didn't expect it, Peyton said. I used to think love meant sacrifice, that it always came with strings or compromise. But with you, it feels like breathing. Michael brushed her hair back from her face. I want to do something for you. You already do. No, he said. I mean something real. Something that shows you I'm in this all the way. I already know. Humor me. The next afternoon, Peyton followed Michael down a narrow tree-lined path just outside the city limits. The air smelled like pine and earth, and birdsong filled the quiet between them. When they reached a clearing, she stopped short. Before them stood a two-story house not extravagant, but beautiful in its simplicity. Freshly painted shutters, a wide porch, and a small swing set in the yard. A for sale sign hung crookedly, with a red sold sticker slapped across the top. She turned to him. Michael. It's ours, he said. I've been saving for years. I just never thought I'd actually get to use it like this. Her hand flew to her mouth. It's close enough to the city that you can still run your empire, he added. But far enough that James can climb trees and ride his bike without traffic. Peyton stepped toward the porch, her fingers brushing the railing. You bought a house. We bought it, he said, stepping beside her. Together, if you want it. She turned to him, her heart catching in her throat. Of course I want it. They stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around each other, as the wind danced through the trees. It wasn't the penthouse. It wasn't the rooftop garden. But it was theirs. 1 year later, their wedding took place in the backyard under a canopy of twinkle lights and wildflowers. Peyton walked barefoot down the aisle, her dress trailing behind her like a whisper. James stood proudly at the front, holding the rings and grinning wide enough to split his cheeks. You sure about this? Michael asked as she reached him. She laughed softly. Now and always. They exchanged vows with voices steady and eyes full of tears, promising not perfection, but partnership. Not escape, but home. After the ceremony, James climbed onto Michael's shoulders and shouted, We're a team now. Peyton reached up and held onto Michael's hand. We always were, she said. As the sun dipped below the treetops and music filled the air, they danced together under the open sky, no audience, no expectations. Just a man who had once fixed cars to survive and a woman who had built an empire to prove she could. Both of them changed now. Because love hadn't made them smaller. It had made them whole.